Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Game Informer Show. I'm your host, Ben Hanson, joined by Kyle Hilliard.
Hello, I'm here.
And then we have Joe Juba.
I'm also here.
Second night in a row, Joe. Still howling mad as ever.
Do I have the record?
You really do. You're a true hero. And then we have Andrew Reiner.
What's up, Big V?
Hey, welcome. E3 Reiner, the craziest Reiner.
Woo!
He's wild. This is E3 is over, you guys.
We did it.
That's it. We heard the announcement today. It goes over the intercom. It's all right, guys. Everyone, go home.
Yeah.
Have a good year.
Get the hell out.
Attention Convention Center, E3 is over. Thank you.
Fun has ended. But they do the very foreboding thing when everyone's like at peak exhaustion. Then they say, "We'll see you June 12th, 2018." It's like, what is that? We'll have flying cars? Like, that's not a real date.
What if they're always like, oh, only 51 weeks until E3 2018?
Or you sort of wistfully think, you won't if I die before then.
Well, we all crave that and think that naturally. Welcome to E3 2017, everybody. So we still have games to talk about. Believe it or not, we've talked a lot on this podcast, covered so many games, some multiple times, but maybe they deserve it. But there's still a million that have slipped through the cracks. So we're going to do some rotations this episode, hopefully smoothly without anybody knocking over a microphone. It'll work really well.
Good luck, yeah.
Kyle Hilliard, you're first up, dude. We have not talked too much about Microsoft's software, so I'd like to focus a little bit.
They don't have any.
That.
No.
Well, it's an interesting case because I think based on discussions on this podcast and conversations, like I think Microsoft had maybe the best press conference, maybe up there with Ubisoft, like neck and neck in my mind. And then we found ourselves talking about Sony software throughout, the week on the podcast and around the show floor. And it's like, oh, maybe all those games really didn't matter if one of them doesn't have as big of an impact as, a God of War or a Spider-Man.
I think they weren't talking points because we've known about those games for a couple of years, like Crackdown, Sea of Thieves. Those games look cool, right? They're coming. But their showcase, just real quick, was more like a look at video games as a whole for the industry. A lot of those games are coming to PS4 and PC as well.
Yeah.
So it was more kind of a showcase. And the way they ended it, too, with Anthem, which no exclusive tie-in there. It was just the coolest game they had or the biggest announcement they had, even though that's going to come to PS4 and PC at the same time, you'd imagine, right?
It is really telling. I mean, normally Sony has such a strong third-party relationship and with developers, and usually their booth is filled with like rows and rows of indie games or third-party games to play. But going over there, there's really not much. They have like a booth set up for like Matterfall. They have, which is a cool game from Housemarque, by the way. I don't know if we'll get to it, but it's definitely worth checking out. And then they also have like a section for PSVR. But I was wandering Sony's booth for a while. I mean, like, where's just like the cool little stuff I can play? And then it's all at Microsoft. Like they are full court press on third-party relationships when it comes to launch exclusives or just getting them in their booth instead of PlayStation's now.
Which is cool. Yeah, if you walk through that booth, you get a good look at, again, like kind of the industry as a whole, right? Not just Xbox One, but you get a good idea of like, oh, there's Assassin's Creed, you get to see those games as you go through there, which is cool.
I was actually walking through there this morning because I was trying to find Tacoma to give that a shot, which turns out that wasn't at the show floor, but that was on like a showcase that Microsoft had earlier in the week. But I noticed the same thing. It's like, I'm like, well, geez, among all of these rows of like kiosks with all these different games, there must be a Tacoma kiosk in there somewhere. There wasn't. But.
Yeah, that's a tough one to put in between, a couple of Battleground games as well, Yeah. But Kyle, I wanted to talk about Crackdown 3.
Yes.
Joe saw a demo of it. You actually played it.
Yeah.
So this game's been in development for a while. Has it shifted developers? Because they've now announced that Sumo's working on it.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know.
It feels... It has a whiff of a troubled development, but nothing really concrete. But how is it to play? How's the gameplay looking these days?
I really liked what I played.
Yeah?
I thought it was a lot of fun. I liked Crackdown 1. I actually never played 2 because I heard it was not worth my time. But I really fell right back into it pretty quickly. I was like, oh, yeah, this is fun. You can, pick up cars, and, I love going after the little icons and stuff. And, there was, one thing that really made me enjoy it a lot. Or rather, there was one thing that I could see as being the main thing that improved it over Crackdown 1 at this stage. I only played it for about 10 minutes. Is that you now have just a little bit of an extra jetpack jump, like a third jump, and then you can also dash forward in midair with your jetpack. And the thing that it means is I never hit that point where I was like, I just missed that ledge. You always have a little bit of extra oomph on your jumping.
So it's less like you're Incredible hulking around boom, boom, and you have a lot more mobility in the air.
Yes, which I guess
Wait, how's that go?
if I boom, boom.
So it used to be boing boing, but now it's
Zip, zip,
boing
zip.
boing boing.
and now,
zip.
now it's more of
Hey.
like a lasso situation.
I think in 3
apparently.
dimensions, Reiner, you can't hold me down. You can't flatten me.
One weird thing is, I guess, what do we refer to him as? I guess the narrator, that voice that talks to you.
Yeah.
He was like, I don't know if maybe it was just for the E3 demo, but it was that thing that Nintendo is really bad about often, is that when you go play a game at their booth, like the people who are handling the demos are like way too complimentary to you, where they're like, oh my gosh, you must be the greatest gamer ever made.
You know how to hold a Joy-Con.
I've never seen
wow.
anyone do that demo so well.
Exactly, and that is basically like that is injected into the game from the narrator, where he's like, "Oh my gosh, you really blew up those bad guys!
See,
You're driving really fast. This is amazing."
In a funny way?
Yes, I think so.
All right.
Yeah.
That narrator's always been a little like tongue in cheek.
Yeah, but let's
I
go.
think so.
I mean, the narrator was the big twist in Crackdown 1, right?
Yeah, I don't. It's
It's the narrator and the Halo 3 demo. Those are the two defining aspects of Crackdown 1 in my mind.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But it was. I like I said, I got back into it really fast, where I was just blowing stuff up, and like I had this cool new like black hole gun, which doesn't make any damn sense, but it's like it just sucks everything in, and then you can just shoot a grenade into the middle of that and explode everything, and it was great. And
It's more cel-shaded than I expected, looking at gameplay footage.
yeah, and the first two were, but it is turned up a little bit here. Yeah, so I had a good time with it. I'm excited to play the full game.
One thing I saw in my demo that I thought was interesting, just from I didn't get my hands on it from a mechanical standpoint. They said that, like in playtest, one of the things they found about the previous ones is that it got a little frustrating to be like, okay, there's a body over there that I want to pick up, or there's some an explosive thing on the ground that I want to pick up and use, and you'd sort of have to like walk over to it and like maneuver yourself around it and press the pickup button.
Video games, you mean?
Normal, yeah, except that if you're trying to maintain this kind of like, I don't know, like kinetic flow of combat,
right.
that gets in the way. So what they have is sort of, I think they're calling it like, I don't know exactly. They called it a hook shot, but that's not what it is, but that's just like conceptually. The idea is that it's just like, instead of having to go up to the car and grab it, you can sort of be in the general area of the car, and you are able to sort of like tether it, or like draw it toward you. And
Is it just a wider circle of like interactivity? Is that kind of what it is, or?
I mean, it's big enough that they needed an in-universe explanation for the fact that you have some sort of gadget that will like suck these things up into your hand.
It must have been pretty subtle, because I didn't pick up on it, or maybe I wasn't grabbing enough stuff that was far away. Maybe I was still in like, oh, I remember Crackdown 1. I got to walk up to this stuff and grab it,
So it's like a suck glove?
Yeah, it's a suck glove.
The old suck
Ooh,
glove.
Dr. Sucklove.
But yeah, it's very fluid. Very, like that. Like I said, it's kind of a small thing, but that little jetpack jump just makes it flow so much more evenly, because I was never missing a ledge. Like it felt like a fun platformer.
Well, what about the destruction? Because that was the big thing a while ago. As we were talking about in multiplayer, just having crazy levels of destruction.
So they clarified that in the demo for me. What that is a competitive multiplayer exclusive feature. So the idea is like in the single player campaign, you need to like save the citizens, save the city, was how they framed it. So it wouldn't make sense that you're just like destroying their homes and stuff all over the place.
Yeah.
Also, maybe it's technically demanding, and that's just the narrative reason they came up with for not doing it.
Sure.
But whatever, for whatever reason, in competitive multiplayer is when they're using that like cloud-based destruction, in which you can sort of like use the environment and buildings in a lot more like clever ways to like basically use them as weapons against your opponents.
I did. So when I was playing the demo, which isn't often in a lot of demos at E3 and stuff, but it actually did give me a timer of 10 minutes. So in the last 30 seconds, I really tried my best to break the game and like use the black hole gun in a big traffic jam and started throwing all my rockets and all my grenades at it and everything. And like, I didn't notice any stuttering or anything like that.
The narrator's like, way to go, break our game.
You've gone too far.
Oh, Christ, I'm dissolving.
Yeah, good time.
Is there a world, Joe, where you look at this game differently post Saints Row 4? Did you think about Saints Row 4 at all while watching this demo? Because people
Saints
might
Row
still
3.
be 4, right? 4 is a
4.
superhero one.
Oh, yeah.
4
3's the best one, but 4 is...
Four is the one that felt like a Crackdown game.
Yeah.
I think, I guess that's a good question. I think in this one, it's more like firearms focused and more like environmentally ability like Saints Row 4 was all about just like using those powers more or less. Like that's what it really hinged on.
Yeah.
And in this one, it seems like they still have that Crackdown core of like creating scenarios that have multiple solutions just based on how you've chosen to develop your character.
I did play Agents of Mayhem today, and I can tell you
weird.
that the main difference between those two games is that in Agents of Mayhem, the camera's a lot closer to you.
Do you have any other thoughts on Agents of Mayhem?
yeah.
It seems like with E3, they're like fully embracing Saints Row. Everybody, it's kind of like Saints Row. Come over here. It's Saints Row.
Actually like. They did feel similar, like absolutely. But I walked away with a positive impression of Agents of Mayhem for that reason, because it felt closer to Saints Row than I expected it to.
Huh.
And I had a pretty good time with it. It's like it's that Saints Row humor that it's like sometimes you're just kind of like, yes, I acknowledge that a joke has been told.
It's a shotgun blast.
Yes, yeah. So, but I after playing, I kind of went in with sort of lower expectations for Agents of Mayhem, and I walked away excited to play it more because it's a goofy single player game with a lot of humor, a lot of it that doesn't hit, but I'm glad it's there.
Yeah. Hey, Reiner.
Yeah.
This is Kyle's chance to win you over because you played Sea of Thieves last year. I don't know if you played it this year. And last year you seemed a little, I don't know. Kyle, you played it this year. Convince Big Daddy Reiner that this might be something worth looking at.
Hey, Reiner.
Yo, dude.
That Sea of Thieves games seems pretty cool.
I don't know, man.
No, you should try it.
All right, I'm going to call it. That's a victory for Kyle.
End scene.
Wow. What?
So last year
clause.
when I played it, it was very bare bones. Like you're on the dock,
Yep.
you get to drink your beer, or whatever, grog. What is it? The
Rum.
pirates-
I think it's grog, actually.
Grog!
drink your grog. You get on the boat, you sail, you battle another boat, and it's again very simple, cartoony. And then it was over. We didn't get to see any of like the looting or getting off the boat, any of that kind of stuff. Is that what you experienced?
Yeah, like me and 3 other players got on a boat. We opened up the map, and like we all decided where we wanted to go. There was an island with like 3 red X's on it. They're like, there's probably a lot of treasure there.
Or porn.
Like we really had no idea what to expect.
You win either way.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
It's the Pornhub.
And yeah, I had a good time like working together. Like I was kind of like watching the map, and like other people were managing the sails and stuff. And like I do worry about that game being a hell of a lot less fun if you're not communicating. Like if you go on there and play that game without talking, I think you might have a bad time. But in that setting where everyone was like, all right, we're here, let's talk, let's discuss, because it was fun. Like sailing to that island was fun, and then we had all these crazy like scenarios happen where like we literally crashed our boat into the island and it sunk, and then like another boat came, and so my 3 players were like fighting the other team, like the real players that were there, while I was fighting the skeletons, and I pulled up the map and I dug up a treasure, and like our boat had sunk. I was holding the treasure. I had like 2 teammates left. We all were just like, well, let's try to steal their boat. And then that all fell apart. And like, and then like what ended up happening is we actually like, we all died and we all respawned on a boat, and we're like, let's go back to that island where we dropped our treasure. And then we headed there, and like, just as we were pulling up to the island, the demo ended. So
See, I was on board until you said you respawned with a boat again. I like the scenario of you guys being screwed.
Now I
Swimming for hours.
do think that might be the situation in like the wider game.
Okay.
But for demo purposes,
okay.
I think they kind of just threw you back in a boat.
Yeah, that sounds
so.
like fun. That's
Like it.
very different than what I saw.
But it's gonna hinge on communication and having a literal good crew. You know, because if it's just they will have things like I talked to Rare afterward, and they do have. Like that's a weird analogy, but like Triforce Hero style like icons where you can say things and point to things.
Link?
No, it's funny because since we were talking so much, I didn't need to use them.
Yeah.
But they are there, and so that's the big question for me is like, will this be fun if you just go in by yourself? And maybe you don't.
I feel like
put
it's
on
kind of like a
mic.
Ghost Recon Wildlands situation though, where it's just if you just brace for like, hey, if you have a group of friends, you can probably have fun with this silly thing.
It's one of those things where when things go wrong, it's pretty funny when you're when you're downstairs, like literally taking a bucket of water to try to empty your sinking boat, and like that's pretty cool. You know?
For sure.
So.
It sounds like we can do a lot of like videos that once this game comes out.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
A lot of us yelling at each other to like, why aren't you fixing the boat? What are you doing?
Finally, tension in the office.
The one thing I want to know is like what you're getting, like loot wise. Like, is that the carrot they're going to dangle in front of you? Is making your boat better, or your pirates better?
There
'Cause right
will-
now it just
better.
seems like you're getting currency or something, and
So that wasn't in the demo, but I did talking to Rare. They said like that's kind of the big thing that they're working on right now, leading up to the early 2018 release, is like adding progression and like the stuff that you can unlock through customization options. But there will be a leveling system. It's not clear how that will work, but that loop. That's what they're working on right now, is getting that loop working. So hopefully it's interesting enough where you do want to keep going and hunting treasure.
Hopefully, it's just not gear for your avatars or whatever.
Yeah, I guess so I'm not a game developer. I don't know how this works, but it does worry me a little bit that they're like, well, now that we've made the game, we're going to worry about what will make players want to play it.
It's kind of important.
I was amazed how much Microsoft gave them space, though, within their booth. Like, it's taking up a lot of real estate, maybe the most real estate in all of Microsoft's booth at E3 this year.
Which one of those games do you think's bigger, Crackdown or Sea of Thieves? For
Bigger as in what?
Just
I think
probably for their market.
I think Microsoft has more faith in Sea of Thieves.
It feels that way.
Yeah.
But I also feel like they've been pushing it so hard as this is the return of Rare you love. Like, if they don't go all in now, like, it's now or never for, like, let's make this Rare thing super worth our money.
Well, and it's just in terms of the market, there are fewer, like fleshed out cooperative multiplayer experiences than there are just, like, open world action games.
Yeah, I guess so, even if they want to leap it in there and everything. But, hey, Kyle, do you want to hot swap out?
Let's do it.
We'll get the old bedmate in here himself. It should be wonderful. Who's it going to be? You'll find out in a little bit. In the meanwhile,
that's very exciting.
Joe, I saw State of Decay 2 today, which I was
Oh,
very
he's a
excited
snake.
about. Kyle's rolling around like a cool guy.
All right.
But I saw a demo. It was the last demo that they showed at E3. That was what I was trying to watch and pay attention to while the bells were chirping and they're saying, "Get the hell out of this convention center." But in the podcast, in the previous weeks, I talked about how PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, I felt, as strange as it is, I felt like it kind of lessened my enthusiasm for State of Decay, just having like a nice tense experience, basically permadeath, foraging, scavenging. I don't really care too much about zombie lore, but seeing that demo, it rekindled everything that I loved about the original State of Decay. Like, they hit that progression beat so hard. It's like, it is, the UI is still not ideal. The first State of Decay was rough, but still, like, you can see, oh my god, I can understand why I'm really going to be into this. And there's this one character in our demo, I assume is the same as yours, where it's like, hey, this character used to work at a garden, and so she is she's very efficient when it comes to farming. So because she has this meter that's so high, based on 1,000 random traits for all these characters that you can find, right? Then you can make a farming outpost add-on to your house, but the construction of that will bring in zombie hordes, and you have to fend that off. But
Wait, what?
Look, when you're building a farm, it makes a lot of noise, and that makes
I
big,
thought
fat
it was like
loaded
they smell like
zombies.
radishes or carrots or something.
No. It's just the noise of construction is a risk.
Radish.
Yeah.
It's radish lust. They just can't get enough of those radishes.
Vegan zombies.
They're so beautiful. But it was funny just because,
Must be in Portland. Sorry, go on.
but in this demo,
Sorry, Portland.
there were super early gameplay, and the game crashed, which the developers was just like a worst case scenario. But I felt like it worked to their advantage, just being a huge State of Decay fan, because at the start of the demo, they emphasized so much like, hey, this is a dynamic world. If you played the first State of Decay, like, we don't know how this is going to go, especially with co-op now, how the other players are going to do.
Real quick.
Yeah.
That they say that in front of so many E3 demos.
100%.
That you're always just like, because I bet if I were to talk to you about our Monster Hunter demo where they
I think
said
we're going to
that-
talk about it later, and that's the exact analogy I want to make.
I bet
You said mine was unique.
yeah, so this is for Reiner.
So,
But
anyway.
with State of Decay, when it crashed, that meant that for the second half there wasn't co-op, and so everything was a little more difficult. And I think that even though they saw it as a bad thing, I think it was a net positive because you got to see how different it was, where it's like, okay, now I really have to gun it, get these items, and then get back to the house and try and fend it off all by myself. And they were just shocked. They're like, oh my god, now this wall is going down because of this. Tiffany, the gardener, has to run out and try and fend off the zombies. She's getting taken away by a bloater and just blown to smithereens. Like, it really ended up elevating the State of Decay experience for me.
Yeah.
And it has rekindled everything that I loved about the original State of Decay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a whole lot to add, actually. I mean, like, from what you said, I think that they really do hammer home that the aspect of, like, the simulation and the community building aspect.
Yeah. And it's so unique.
Is really what said, like, that, to me, that game was never a game that was about, like, oh, I'm a character going out in a zombie world and killing zombies and getting items. For me, it was always what was always so great about it is how everything fed back into that loop, into that like base building simulation and stuff.
But it's the sim angle that I think we're both into, and I hope they don't push story too much. If there's like some unique dialogue, little moments, that's fine. But I don't want cutscenes with these characters. I love them as stats and quips.
So here's a few things about this. I actually put up a story on our website that's just sort of like, these are a handful of like things that I noticed in my demo that just seemed like, wow, that's a big improvement over the original. Because in a lot of ways, and I guess maybe you have a different take, but like it feels very similar to the first one. Like it's not like State of Decay 2 is like, oh, we've drastically reinvented State of Decay. It seems like it's just like, okay, we had a good idea last time, and this time we're making it work better.
Right.
And like for me, one of those things was the fact that like you can now, like if there's someone in your community that you want to like come with you on a supply run, you can be like, hey, AI companion, let's go get something.
I could have sworn, was that just an expansion thing with the first State of Decay? I could have sworn that was in there.
You absolutely could not do that in the first one.
Maybe that was
there
DLC.
I mean, maybe later down the line there was, but at least like in the version I played, that was a very conspicuous thing because it's like, all right, we have 10 people here at this commune who are interested in surviving. It would be in our best interest to send more than just one dude out into zombie, but like, you couldn't. And then on the other side of that, they've also added co-op, which the game was just begging for, I think.
And it's a really cool way to trigger it, where you can register in your game if you're up for volunteering for this type of thing. But if you need help in your version of State of Decay 2, you just literally shoot a flare into the sky. It's like an item. And then when you shoot that flare up, then it'll like Dark Souls warp another player in, and they can help you out.
You just constantly keep a flare in the sky?
And then people always come for you, yeah. Just a minigun of flares.
One player to camp, just constantly.
And then instead of a zombie horde, it's just a horde of other players.
Then it becomes Rust instead. Is that the Naked Dude game?
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's so many Naked Dude games. But on the improvement side, I was second guessing myself, but maybe they changed this from the first game to something I really loved. But they're talking about morale, which is a really fun idea in a game like this, you know, an open world action survival game, where the overall team and like the home base's morale will change, including little things like one of these random traits can be one of the characters snores when he sleeps, and that'll lower morale for the entire home base. Just so brilliant. But they said like, oh, if the morale gets too low, you get less XP and you build things slower. Or some characters might just leave or have a violent exit where they might like shoot some other people on their way out the door.
Hell.
But in the first one, it's dark, but I thought it was so unique that if morale gets too low, like
just suicide.
Yeah, they'll just put a gun in their mouth. And like I wasn't 100% that was in there, and if I was misremembering that, so I was trying to like ask questions in that field of like, yeah, but what's the most extreme case of low morale on a personal level? And they're like, oh, you know, they could just leave and maybe you'll encounter them later in the world. And it's like, yeah, but is there anything more extreme than that? And they didn't bring up suicide. Maybe they just had a no suicide mention rule at E3, or
and
maybe
like,
it's not
what
in this
if I have a
one.
pistol? Like, what?
Yeah.
They use whatever weapons they have to. Never mind.
Yeah. But I mirror your thoughts from yesterday's podcast.
So
I'm really excited.
The one thing about it that I still have to worry about is that, and I don't remember if we talked about this yesterday or not, is like the technical angle of it.
Sure.
Which is the fact that like, it's like for all of the things that I loved conceptually about the original State of Decay.
Yeah.
It got so hard to appreciate that because of the many ways it was technically falling apart and like breaking at the seams, right? Yep. So my demo, I was very heartened by the fact that it's like, wow, like they went through that whole thing and like I didn't see a single like weird clipping on the zombie. Saw the co-op worked. There was no no crashing or anything like that. So I was just like, wow, great. Looks like they're improving on this. Not that 20 minutes is enough to judge that, but I mean, just from a quick take. Hanson's experience sounds a little different from mine.
It is the end of the show, and you cannot hold the software accountable. Like, it's E3, it's super early, stuff happens, and so this is not an indicator of where it's going to go. But I just have to imagine, because that seemed like number one with a bullet for critiques of the first State of Decay.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'd imagine that's the top of their whiteboard is let's QA the hell out of this
Make
thing.
it work.
Functional, please.
I broke Wolfenstein.
Oh,
Did
yeah?
you really?
How'd that
did.
happen?
Oh, by the way, Brian Shea's here too.
Hey, everyone.
Oh, hey, Shea.
Now let's ignore Shea for a little bit and talk about Wolfenstein.
Please.
So I was just playing Wolfenstein, and all of a sudden, like, the dialogue started getting jittery. Like, dun, 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 dun. And then I went to interact with the door, and it just completely crashed it. It was like, "Arr!" And I just, like, looked around, and nobody's looking. I put the controller down and just slid a chair over to the next one. Oh, really? I started playing, and then eventually a Bethesda guy came in and was, like, kind of moving the controller. I was just, like, looking, like... He's like, oh, weird. This one's locked up. I was like, that's weird.
Dan Reichert from Giant Bomb was playing that before. I don't know what he did.
I also played the Wolfenstein demo just because apparently people were really hot on the press conference trailer. I thought it was bizarre, but I didn't.
It was
really...
hard to follow.
I
thought.
couldn't sink my teeth
Yeah.
into what exactly was exciting about this game. But just playing the early part of the playable section here at E3, it is bold and strange. It opens in a very Phantom Pain style way, where you're in a hospital and it's like, BJ, you've been in bed for 5 months or something. Like your muscles aren't working anymore. And so the entire opening sequence, you're in a wheelchair.
Yeah,
And you think
but you
if
have an Uzi.
Well, this is where it gets absolutely insane. So you're wheeling around this hospital, which has, I don't know, magnetic electronic pulses that'll evaporate Nazis all around you. You're flipping a lot of switches to turn on these gates on and off. It's setting traps. It's cool.
Okay.
But you're doing all this in a wheelchair, and there's stuff where it's like, well, there's a staircase. I don't know what to do. Oh, there's a giant wheel spinning. I need to roll my wheelchair onto that, and it'll carry me around. And there's just bizarre situations where there'll be a ramp. And this is something I've never done in a first-person shooter game before, where you're just rolling your wheelchair onto the ramp, then you start rolling super fast down the ramp, and then there's a swarm of Nazis. You just take your Uzis out and you're firing, rolling down a ramp in a wheelchair. It's wild stuff. Did you enjoy it, Reiner?
I did, and I thought, you know, right when it started to feel like it's going to get repetitive, like going down one hallway, throwing a switch to evaporate some guys.
Yeah.
Then they'd change it up. Like, you get knocked out of your wheelchair, they have like this little sequence
Yep.
where you're like, whoa, what's going on now? And then, you know, I don't want to spoil anything narratively, but they introduce the Axis, someone who's involved in the Axis, and she is terrible in this, and the way she's even treating her own people is puzzling. But yeah, they tease kind of the armor that you see BJ get in the trailer, how you're going to get that, but the fate of other people around you is like right there. I was like hooked. Like in that 5 minutes, I was hooked on their story too, as well as the gameplay. Like the gameplay was fun, but I was like, I want to see where this goes. And then the logo came up and it was over. I was like, I want more of that.
Yeah. It's really also just another thing that really stood out is the dialogue and the performances is really fantastic. Like early on, there's this Jewish doctor who I think he's a doctor, but he's speaking in Yiddish quite a bit. But it's rare to be wowed by her performance in the middle of E3's insanity, but just with headphones on, I was like, man, this voice actor is nailing it.
Yeah, it was good, but they also had, as I'm listening, I had the same thought. I was like, this is a great voice actor, and the tech looks great.
Yeah.
But they had a little comedy skit going on in the background.
Of the Nazis being evaporated?
Yeah, like they just keep running in the room, and they don't know because there's no corpses. They just keep coming in. But you're like, it's kind of like this intense conversation you're having with this guy, but you can't help but laugh at it.
Yeah.
It's genius. Like, I really like that. What, 15, 20 minutes?
Yeah. It's a stupid comparison, but I'll make it. Like, it's really up there with Mario Odyssey for like one of the most creative games I've seen at the show so far. So it's a constantly unexpected things being
Hanson,
thrown at you.
Did you play Wolfenstein? Like, what? The last two?
I played like
New
the first
Order,
couple
Old Blood.
hours of the last one and then the DLC, which I can't remember the name of right
Oh,
now.
you got to get
Blood.
through there.
Not
Like,
much. I get really nauseous, and Wolfenstein is one that really does it to me to the point that I only saw the wheelchair section of this demo. I had to stop, and I
just
felt
threw
so
up
terrible.
everywhere.
Like, great game, gotta go. I'll take your milkshake. 'Cause they recreated like the diner from the Nazi sequence in the trailer, and they were serving milkshakes. It was awesome. It was
yeah,
a
I
great
saw
setup.
Neil Druckmann walking around with a strawberry milkshake. I was like, I know what you played, man.
Hey, it looks like this guy killed some Nazis. Cool.
I want a milkshake.
Sorry, we only have Ducati. Hey, Brian Shea.
Hey, what?
Ashen.
Yeah.
This is a game that was on Xbox's stage.
Yeah, ID at Xbox, the big one they were pushing at my meeting. And
So this is the one that almost looked a little bit like Evil Within 2's trailer, where it's a lot of black and a lot of white and a lot of goo and a lot of light and a lot of dark.
a lot of light and a lot of dark in this game.
What is this game, Ashen?
So basically you're in this big open world, and there's no sun in the world. And like ash just kind of covers the world, and it's like illuminated ash. And so like there's a lot of like really, really dark areas where like the ash hasn't reached because, there's no sun. But like, yeah, like basically you're exploring this world. Some things are hostile, some things aren't, as is most games.
What
but
are we talking? Dark Souls? What are we talking?
it is kind of like a Dark Souls thing, like a third-person action game. And yeah, but the hook is that it's passive multiplayer. So kind of like Journey.
Oh,
where
bizarre.
you're just kind of walking and then suddenly there'll be another guy in your game. But you need to like use that other person to get through puzzles in the game, in the world. Like like the dungeon that they showed us, you couldn't access just with one person.
So it's like Way Out where you got to play it cooperatively. I mean, serious. That's a serious.
Yeah,
question.
like you have to play it with another person for some sequences.
I don't understand because Journey, I think it makes the experience better, but it's never 100% necessary.
Yeah,
as I can
that's-
recall. So are you worried about situations where you're just gonna be sitting around waiting for another weirdo
Yeah,
to
but they
pop
did.
in?
I did ask them about the ability to play kind of offline.
Yeah.
And they said that there's like a way to get like an NPC character to kind of follow you and like get you through the part that you need to.
They'll just like appear if there's a certain time.
I think
gets
like
hit.
because you have a town that you can go to and like build up and everything, and if you go to that town and like you've found somebody, like I guess that you can take them to the area that you need to access like the two players.
Huh.
But yeah, and then there was
That
like,
sounds tedious.
so there was a I don't know exactly how they're gonna get it figured
Yeah,
out, but
yeah,
it looked pretty cool. Like the combat did seem kind of Dark Soulsy. And there was a pretty like they went down to this dungeon. It's like loot based, and there's a lot of secrets like to explore. A lot of like things off the beaten path like that they found, and then there was a pretty intense boss battle with this thing called the Elder Dark. It was like this like kind of like just shadowy like creature that they had to like you fought him, and then he would jump into the wall, and then like you had to solve like a quick little like puzzle like using like the light to get him out of it. And then he had like this like pulse blast that he kept doing, and like the only time you could really do any damage was when he was charging up that pulse blast. So he'd charge up for like 5 seconds, you get your hits in, and then like kind of roll dodge away.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how Lovecrafty is this game?
It's pretty Lovecrafty.
Okay.
I'm not gonna
Is
give you a-
Elder thing? Is that just a Lovecraft? Elder gods? Does that come from Lovecraft? Why do I have that in my mind?
I think
Joe,
so,
your
yeah.
brow is furrowed.
I think that's. I'm trying to remember if that terminology like originated there or not, but I think
Yeah, something like that.
definitely Elder Gods. If it didn't start there, is evocative of like you pull that out if you want people to think, like cosmic horror.
Right. Like a Lovecraftian old folks home.
There's definitely some moments of that because like after that went down this like narrow pathway and like into like a cavern, and this just like you see this woman and you talk to her and like she plays this instrument and this giant like other woman comes out of the water.
Other woman.
Yeah, like a giant, like she's huge. Like
Yeah.
What kind of instrument?
I don't know.
Woman summoner.
Yeah, woman summoner.
Stringed. That sounds neat. Hey, speaking of stuff that had a lot of real estate on the show floor that we haven't really talked about yet is LawBreakers.
Yeah.
Cliffy B's big shooter fiasco, which the last trailer was actually really good. I don't know if you guys watched it.
Yeah,
but
and
it
it's
was
on
really
PS4
fun.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So how did it play? What was fun about it?
I liked it a lot more with the PS4 controller than I did mouse and keyboard, but then again, I'm not a mouse and keyboard player.
Grow up.
But yeah, I mean, it definitely has that like class-based shooter thing that I like about Overwatch. But like it's definitely a different game from Overwatch.
Are they still
Like,
swearing a lot in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of swearing.
F yeah.
But like, yeah, you charge up your ultimate, and it feels a little bit more skill based, like with your use of ultimate when you're playing LawBreakers. Like some
Okay.
things you kind of like just set it and forget it with the Overwatch ultimates. But
Yeah.
like LawBreakers, I tried out like 3 characters, and all of them had like you had to actually like aim once you activated the ultimate. Like
Okay.
there was one guy where like he has like the gunslinger class, and he has like a pistol that's kind of like McCree's pistol, and then on the other hand, it's like a Tracer's pistol. So like dual wields pistols, but like they're different. So one's like kind of like a burst fire, one's just like a revolver kind of.
That's cool.
And then when you activate your ultimate, both of them just turn into like automatic weapon and they do like crazy damage.
Did it seem like it was getting a good reaction? Were people
Yeah,
into
it seemed like people were into it.
Oh, good.
And I played a mode called Blitzball. And
It's really called Blitzball?
Yeah. And it's
You can't do
Can
that.
they do that?
You
I
can't
don't
do that.
know.
It's copyrighted.
But yeah, basically a ball spawns in the middle, and you have to take it to the goal on the other side, and like
And then you become
it's
the
just capture the flag
Tetramaster.
pretty much. Yeah, and then you protect Lady Una from sin.
Weird.
Compete in the Triple Triad Cup.
Hey, Shea, is there any character in there that's like Mai from Overwatch?
No.
May or
You
Mai?
call her Mai?
So
I never play her,
You
so I don't care.
pervert.
I know why Reiner's asking this. So I talked to Cliff after I played, and we got on the subject of like comparing the game to Overwatch, and he said that like, you know, like a lot of those characters are great, but he just cannot stand May. He thinks that
Abilities wise or personality wise?
Abilities wise, he thinks that like the freezing of a character in a shooter is just the worst thing you could possibly do. He was just like, I'd rather be sent back to the respawn queue.
Now, I'm a May main kind of guy, so I have to defend her in every way here. It is a bold choice for Overwatch so early on, but you do not realize how satisfying it is to see someone frozen and then just take your icicle gun to their forehead.
I'm going to assume Cliff was on the receiving end of that.
That must be the case. And I think, as frustrating as that can be to be frozen by May, I think it's made up for, even though people are frustrated by this. I love changing the geometry of Overwatch levels with the ice wall. I know it can be frustrating. You can get effed over by your teammates.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But it is so much fun just completely just upend everything in the level because of that thing.
Yeah, I like that too. But yeah, he was very against the idea of freezing characters.
Well, the real LawBreakers may get to 10 out of 10. I'll be damned. What a conclusion.
You suck, Cliffy B. You suck. Play better.
And now the reason you're really here, Shea, this is what you were born to do. E3. Let's talk about Sonic Mania and Sonic Forces. We've talked about Sonic Mania before on the podcast, but still looking like the cream dream thrill of a lifetime for Sonic fans.
Yeah, that's the verbiage I would use.
No, did you learn anything new about Sonic Mania? That's interesting.
Not really anything new that like we haven't known before. It's just like every time, like, you know, the first time I play it, it was just like 2 different zones, and I was like, okay, that's really cool. It's a nice throwback. Then I play another level, and it's like it still looks really good, and it's like I'm kind of like they just did the chemical plant zone, which is like the beloved level from 2.
Yeah,
and it's like they might pull this off. Like, this is like a really cool like throwback game that's, you know, like half the levels are new, half of them are like remakes, but the remakes aren't just like, here's the same level, enjoy. It's like the first act is a little bit samey to like the original, but then you get into the second act and it's like it pretty much just turns the level on its head.
That's smart.
Like they introduce new elements that are still like consistent with the themes of the zone itself. So like in Chemical Plant, for example, like there's a lot of like different like scientific looking things. So like they added like new like it's a chemical
Reiner's
plant.
pretending he's asleep.
So yeah, like, you know, there's like helixes that fly you up, and there's so in conclusion, it looks good.
So in conclusion, this is very much like a game that released 30 years ago, 10 out of 10.
It's cool. It really is cool. Sega's doing it. Absolutely.
They've been demanding this forever.
The fact
Joe,
that
how
they
dare
got
you.
they got a stable of indie developers to come together and make a game that emulates the original type of game that people have been wanting for, as you said, 25 years.
All right, now let's get to Sonic Forces.
Sonic Forces. So
is there a world for this when Sonic Mania exists?
Yeah, I think so. I think like it's kind of like the other side of the coin. Like I think it feels most like a sequel to Sonic Generations, which I know a lot of people really liked. I liked that a lot.
Half of it was all right.
Yeah, like the half when it was like the older levels.
Yeah.
So this one, it's all original levels except for the first level for Classic Sonic. So there's modern Sonic, Classic Sonic, and then your custom character, which I was I was very skeptical about that. But
How big was the wang on your custom character?
why didn't
I'm
get to
sure we're
create
going to have
it?
lots of real cool
Yeah, it's
options
like
out
Saints
there.
Row where you have like the manhood
slider,
modifier or whatever. But yeah, like you can. I think it's like 7 different animal species you can choose from. The character was already created for me, and I could just choose which ability I wanted. So like, there's a bunch of different abilities, and one was like burst, where like you have a flamethrower, and then you just burn the enemies alive. But it also can be used in platforming.
Sonic.
So the thing that like
flay, where you just flay their skin off and watch them suffer. It's cool.
well, the other ability that I could play with has like an electric whip, and like it just takes out enemies. Or you can also use it
I
for.
see where we're going.
You can also use it for platforming to like if you like whip it attracts you. Yeah, it attracts you to rings. So like if you're trying to get up to a higher platform, you whip it and it like brings you up to that. Or like
Love it.
The burst can like almost like propel you through the air. So like each has an attack and like a platforming ability.
Does the entire game have that weird Russian revolutionary vibe, or is that just the key art and logo?
Well, the only level I've played with modern Sonic is like the like you're in like a Italian villa almost, and then classic Sonic is it looks like straight out of Sonic Generations for classic Sonic. But I played a cool little boss battle with him where it's like it starts out where it's just Robotnik up in his like little like hover thing, and he has the ball that's dangling back and forth like the first boss battle in Sonic 1.
Yeah.
And then you beat him in that, and then he takes it up and goes into like a giant dragon robot, and he goes in the back and he starts shooting rocks at you, and you have to like kind of volley them back at him. And yeah, it was fun. He has a Gatling gun you have to avoid.
There we go.
Are we going to finally get a resolution to the Mephiles storyline?
I asked about that, and he said that
You did not.
I did. I asked about Mephiles.
Oh God.
And he said they have no further plans. And also Princess Elise, they haven't checked in on her recently, but she may be a queen now.
Also, shut up.
And she has not found another hedgehog lover.
Please leave our booth.
I did ask
You
about
nerd.
a hedgehog lover, and she said no. I think she's like back with humans.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Oh, at least humans specifically, and not onto other like weirder animals. Yeah.
Ones with flamethrowers exclusively. That's what I'm into. Hey, Shea, God bless you. I hope you've had a wonderful E3. Is there one shining moment from this E3 you'd like to share before you leave?
No,
Have you had
Okay,
a good
bye.
time?
I've had a good time. I'm just really tired
Okay.
because that's E3.
Hey,
That's
baby.
E3, baby.
Hey, goodbye, Shea. All right, special guest, do you want to walk on in? I'm really looking forward to hearing what
Oh my
you
God,
gotta
Tim
say.
Schafer.
Tim Schafer.
What was that walk?
Classic Tim. Ben Reeves, everybody.
Boy.
Hey, Ben, you played Oh, and David Milner's back, everybody.
Yeah, let's put a little shrimp on the barbie, eh?
Oh, original.
Hey.
Oh, yuck.
Oh, yoy.
Hey, you played Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Do you want
Yeah.
to talk about this?
Yeah,
I played it.
sure. It's a fighting game. How much of it did you play, Reiner? Did you play the...
I played the single player campaign, so I saw some of the story
Okay.
stuff.
Yeah, so I wrote a thing on the site, actually, about how disappointed I am in this single-player campaign.
Oh no.
Yeah, so I feel like Injustice kind of raised the bar on what single-player fighting game stories could be. You know, it's stupid fun, but it's awesome.
Right.
And this is like a by the numbers, just like here's all these characters. Like one of them says a half joke, and another one says some dumb punchline, and then they fight.
So the idea is that it just doesn't get like crazy enough for you or something.
It doesn't get, but it's also like the story doesn't make sense. It's like somebody threw a bunch of like
Dude,
ideas
Mega
in a
Man's hanging
bag.
out with like Captain America.
Okay, so
You gotta get over that, like, right away.
You reference Injustice, so it's like let's just assume that Injustice didn't set a new bar.
Okay.
Is this just par for the course for other fighting games then? Or below even that?
Man, I think it's below even that, honestly. I think the other big problem, actually, is that every match... This is supposedly the beginning of the game that I played for, like, the first 30 minutes. So I played, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 matches of the story mode. And each one, you're fighting, like, the same guys.
Yeah,
So
the same Ultron
the
minions.
So the story is that Sigma from Mega Man X universe
Okay.
comes and infects Ultron from the Marvel universe, and they create, like, some new Sigma Ultron creature.
They had a baby.
Yeah, which
Weird.
I'm for that.
Alright.
That's fine.
I like that.
Yeah, Robot
And
Baby, Robot 6.
he sends out a bunch of like Ultron drones and starts corrupting Asgardians, which I guess.
Oh, are they robots?
So they're like Sigma corrupted. Yeah, I don't quite get that part, but like they're Sigma corrupted Asgardians. So they're like Thor's brothers, and they're trying to fight him. So the whole like 30 minutes that I played, all I was fighting was Ultron drones and these Asgardians.
The
And
one-
it's super repetitive.
Yeah, I got that too. I got that feeling too, where like the first stage or whatever you're in, it's weird to play the same enemies over and over, but you are switching characters every time, right? That you're
Right.
playing as. But for me, they're trying to go for like this big, huge, epic vibe, kind of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe,
Yeah.
like end of days kind of thing. And it's like, Captain America standing there triumphant, ready to fight. Then you get Mega Man there, and it's like, okay, that's a little weird. But when Arthur from like Maximo and Ghouls and Ghosts shows up, he looks as weird as like a Muppet standing next to
Right.
humans, and and they're like interacting with him, having like seriously penis jokes, like I'm just like, what the hell is this?
But
maybe I made those up, but
yeah, I mean that would have made it better, honestly, in my opinion. It is goofy in that sense, and it's goofy to like see Mega Man throwing Cap's shield and whatnot, but they don't like tonally, story wise. It seems like it's very serious. Like they're kind of taking it Resident Evil 6 style, like that direction.
Which seems like a mistake
Yeah.
if your premise is like a interdimensional
Yeah.
universe.
Yeah,
match.
exactly.
It's
seems
like
like
if
they should
Heroes
have
of the
fun with
Storm
it.
was gritty.
Yeah. I wanted them to have fun with it, but they're not. You know, they're trying to be a part of that same comic vibe.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
It's kind of too bad. But I liked what I played, the combat at least.
But in terms of combat, yeah, I played a couple 1v1 matches against Serial, and I'm not like a pro player or anything.
You don't have to.
Although
tell
I'm
us
sure
that.
I'm sure I could compete if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Who won?
But you know, a lot of. I mean, we don't need to go into specifics on who won, how many matches, and who lost all of them. But I will say that the combat felt really good. And I think Serial would say the same thing, even though he lost a lot of matches. But and I've been reading some things like from some pro players who were playing it, and they seem pretty positive on it too. So it sounds like this one could kind of stack up at least in that circuit, which is cool. And I thought it was fun. Like it's very simple to like do ultra moves too. If you have the easy mode, easy controls turned on, you just hit 2 buttons and you're throwing your ultra finishers at people. Like it's a lot of fun.
it looks nice too.
If it's in like a similar vein, I wonder if there's going to be any competition there between the fantastic DBZ fighters and this game. You know, if they're both going for that fast, zany, swap out, ally focused combat for the fighting games.
So I liked Marvel vs. Capcom 2 a lot but in the day and didn't play a lot of 3. So
You taught me how to play 1.
That's right.
I just was pressing buttons for a very long time.
And I would like to get back into this series. We'll see if 4 does it. After seeing Dragon Ball Z, I'm like, I would really like it to look like that. Like really just go for it and just make the animation just look amazing.
Did you guys, we talked about it a little bit, but have you guys looked at Dragon Ball Fighters? Have you just stood there and looked at what they're doing?
It's like looking at the sun. You'll go blind. So
It's as stupid as like, you know, years ago, last year, 2 years ago, when the new Guilty Gear came out and it was doing that 2D, 3D hybrid style and people were trying to wrap their minds around it, that was awesome. But then you can connect that technical marvel with one of my most beloved franchises of all time. Now it's like, okay, now I just want to lick the screen. Good God.
Man, that Guilty Gear game looked super good.
Yeah, but now imagine it's Frieza and Cell fighting each other.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, those
Joe.
guys.
Frieza is like the coolest. I'm trying to think who
Wait a minute. Okay, so I know a very little bit. Isn't Frieza just like the first big bad guy, and then they just keep escalating and getting more badass?
Technically, the
than him?
first bad guy in Z would be Raditz and Nappa, who are
Nah,
disposed
whatever.
of very quickly. Frieza's like, what is the equivalent? Frieza might be like the first like Ultron, if we're going for like the long form of like MCU, where it's like otherworldly. It's been teased for a long time. Then eventually they go to another planet and fight Frieza, and Frieza is just effed up, just kills so many people. Blows up the entire planet
Hey,
while fighting. It's
we-
amazing.
We can save this for a Dragon Ball Z podcast.
How much time did that
that's debatable. That was a Twitter exchange. That look, I would love to do it, but I don't think you realize what you're getting into. That is a long haul. That's like saying, let's casually have a podcast about every page of Moby Dick. That'll be fun.
I would do that.
Yeah. Look, it'll
Let's do
stretch
it.
thin.
We're not talking about the whole Dragon Ball Z series. We're talking Dragon Ball series. We're talking about just the new ones.
Oh, well, you can't watch Dragon Ball Super without knowing Z.
I think that's part of the fun.
Oh no, sir.
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it.
no.
Damn.
Hey, let's talk about Life is Strange.
Ooh, yeah.
Reiner, you and
So
I,
Kyle's life?
our whole
We had a
plan,
date.
Yeah, our whole plan this entire 3 was like, we're gonna hold hands and walk the entire show floor, inseparable. And I saw you once at the Life is Strange appointment.
Yeah, it did not work out as planned.
Yeah,
But
we were both gravitated there because we heard good things, and it's a curious setup because this is a prequel, 3-episode prequel called Before the Storm, focusing on Chloe, much like Uncharted Lost Legacy. This one stars Chloe.
Top 2 Chloes of E3.
so right there, we're on board. Right, we're on board.
Absolutely.
It's fine doing a prequel. That's cool.
Right.
Chloe's back. Great.
Yeah.
Then
How does
what?
she sound?
Actually, I mean, so Ashley Birch isn't voicing her this time, and I was listening carefully, and it's a pretty close facsimile. It really wasn't as jarring as you might expect.
Yeah. Now, and whether or not that's the... Because, like, there's been some stuff out there on Twitter about, like, whether or not Square Enix, like, could have actually gotten Ashley through some sort of, like, special thing. They just didn't want to, like, shell out for it. Or
If she
Well,
just
she
went
does
to
because of the voice acting strike, right?
Well,
Yeah,
there
but
was
then Will
that-
Wheaton's like, it's not a real thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
That's not a
Yeah.
real
You
thing.
can. There's like a
No.
loophole or something.
the strike is real, but there was some sort of loophole, and maybe Square just didn't want to pay for it.
You just go to Russia and
What-
record your
all-
dialogue.
All of that stuff aside, I mean, like, so as much as I liked the original Life is Strange, it's been a while since I played it, and I think if I didn't know that they changed voice actresses, I don't know that I would have been able
It's
to
true.
tell. the
It's
difference.
pretty close.
But the real strange situation is different dev team.
Yeah.
I didn't look into it. So the dev team, Deck 9, I'm not sure what they've worked on.
Like I don't know their full history, or if they've even actually put out a game before this.
Yeah.
So we interviewed the lead writer, Kim and I did, and they basically formed a while back with the intention of making, like, we were going to make narrative focused games.
Yeah.
And they obviously really liked Life. I mean, they played Life is Strange first as fans, right? And then the opportunity to sort of do the sequel came up because, as Don't Nod has announced, Don't Nod is doing a sequel, so Deck 9 is doing a prequel.
Of course. Sure.
So, I think that whatever they were working on sort of transformed into or was put on hold as they sort of focused on this project.
Is it the same writing team, or they
No.
like how
No.
they have somebody?
It feels like it.
Really?
That was my big thing. Is seeing it's
That's-
like, okay, it looks like Life is Strange, and they even made a point, which was fishy, right out of the gate with the demo. They're like, oh, this is a new environment we made for this prequel. But there'll be some recycled stuff from before. And it's like, oh, I think there's gonna be a lot more recycled stuff than people realize.
Oh yeah,
for
it's the
this
same
prequel.
city. Yeah, so
Right.
they're going in new interiors, stuff like that. But
Yeah.
the school's got to be there, right?
I would imagine.
The
yes.
junkyard we already saw.
So it's Chloe 3 years before. So it's 2 years after her father died. She doesn't have blue hair. Rachel, lady that goes missing in Life is Strange. It's about their relationship, which might be a little more complicated and nuanced than we would think, which was a little bit out of the left field for me. But
Oh, really?
I didn't know Rachel was a lesbian.
Well, I think that's intentionally left, maybe implied, but not explicitly stated in the original game.
Yeah.
But because it's not explicitly stated, you as players kind of have the opportunity to sort of determine the depth of that relationship
Right.
when you're playing.
yeah, there's that
as
one
Chloe.
moment in this demo, at least, that is we're good, we're friends, or it's something more.
Yeah.
So, anyways, where I was going with that, Reeves, is the writing very quickly was like, oh, yes, this is everything I like and everything that frustrated me about Life is Strange, where I love the idea of just this small town setting. And I think it's really interesting not having the rewind powers. In theory, not having anything supernatural. I think that's really compelling.
Yeah.
But then the writing is, Chloe going to a concert and going in there, can't wait to get in there and just thrash. And a lot of dopey lines like that. I was like, oh, that's right. Life is Strange. Okay.
Yeah. And to me, I mean, like, over the course of the original Life is Strange, that kind of stuff really grew on me and became sort of part of its charm. Is the like
I don't
I
understand.
don't mean it as a criticism necessarily, but just the like there's the way it handles grown adults trying to write teenage characters. I think maybe is where it goes a little awry.
I still think they had problems writing adult characters too. Honestly.
Oh yeah. I mean, it all kind of feels the same to me. But from them to go to like groan-inducing dialogue just to an intense sequence, like just shift that gear so quickly. They did that like 2 or 3 times in this demo, and I was like on board. Like, oh, what's going to happen here? What choice should we make? We got to yell it out in the demo.
Yeah, it was a stupid situation because it's like, what do you want to do in this conversation? And then like the options are run or fight or apologize, and it's just a weird thing to find myself in a group of people yelling, apologize! You should apologize! That'd be badass!
Everyone's like, boo!
Don't apologize!
See, this is super weird too, because like the things I liked about Life is Strange were the supernatural elements.
Yeah.
And like those were the compelling bits that made me keep playing. And if it's missing from this, and the moment to moment dialogue is still goofy, like I'm not sure what is gonna.
I was more into the relationships and drama and kind of just her place in life. Like I thought that was, and Chloe too. Like
Sure.
I thought that was really interesting. So for them to scale back and really hone in on that, yeah, you're right, Ben. That is an element that's interesting, right? That kind of rewind and all that stuff. But I do think this is kind of a proof of concept for them. This is going to be a big test. Like, is that enough? And I think it is. Like, what I really remember about Life is Strange is, like I said, the characters and moments.
The characters in those moments, and like Ben had said, like being in a quiet a quiet town that feels like a real place. And like, and to me, and this is, I mean, you know, just my own personal take on it is that like I feel like I liked the rewind power for Max, but to me, like that was so specifically to deliver a certain thematic message that sort of culminated in the final episode of that series. That's like yes, it provided gameplay mechanics along the way, but in a way that, because they never really explained the power, it never really like made sense or felt necessary as much as it was to really just drive that point home in that final episode for me.
Yeah,
So.
definitely. Speaking of character moments with that thing, there's one moment where I was like, Jesus Christ, Chloe, where she's at a concert and she's like, these guys are selling T-shirts for $20. That won't do. So she like,
Have you ever bought a T-shirt in your life?
It's
not that bad.
Yeah, concerts, $20 T-shirt. That's fine.
That's pretty cheap,
That's
actually.
reasonable.
Yeah, maybe
yeah,
3
for
years
sure.
ago it was different where this game takes place. Yeah, so she like raises the parking brake on this car and then it like goes crashing through this concert venue. It's like, Jesus Christ,
I'm going to
madman.
ruin your car so I can steal a T-shirt. And
They
the
deserve
reason, I mean, the commentary they give on this during the demo is that like Chloe and Max are different characters. Max being the protagonist of the previous one, and that
Boring
like,
goody two shoes versus badass chick.
Yeah, exactly. So like I think that's maybe a little extreme to accentuate the differences between them, but like absolutely Max would have never just been gonna break your car so I can steal a T-shirt. So
Yeah. Hey, there was a discussion brewing about the impact of Monster Hunter World.
Oh my god!
Within the game from our office, because we have Lele, who was in the Monster Hunter replay a while back.
Excited pose.
Yeah, she is in the production. She's a wonderful person.
She's losing her mind over
She
this
is
game.
so
Yeah.
excited about Monster
She
Hunter
should.
World. She's a longtime fan, and the idea of like another, in theory, fully fleshed out console Monster Hunter, like this is a huge deal. You guys need to check it out. We all checked it out, right?
Yeah.
Also, we're all varying degrees of not Monster Hunter fans. Joe has tried.
yeah,
And Reiner, you're an old school
I
Monster Hunter
have
fan?
played. I played through the latest one on Wii U with my buddy,
Okay.
and
You beat it?
absolutely, yeah, absolutely
What?
adored it. Yeah, we
can
played
beat
it all
those?
the time.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah,
I didn't
absolutely
know.
loved it. Ultimate? I think it was Ultimate.
Okay.
Absolutely loved it. Yeah, that's probably my number one Wii U game at the end of days.
What?
Yeah, yeah, that's the one I would
I
put
never-
on my island and play.
Reeves, we spend all day, every day with this guy. You think this would have come up? This is
had no
crazy.
idea.
Yeah, yeah.
Now he's
Number
going
one
to tell
Wii
us he's like an Overwatch fan or something.
No. So, what did you think of the demo? Because I saw it, I loved it, and then I said, you got to go see this thing.
Yeah. So the big thing for me was like I get in there, and it's beautiful, right? Like it
Looks pretty
looks good. Yeah, the animation's still a little hitchy.
A lot of clipping, but
Yeah.
you know.
Kind of goofy, that weird, like, comedic kind of eating a big chicken leg or
Yeah.
big hunk of meat as he's
Running
battling
around.
dinosaurs. Very strange, right?
Yeah.
But the moment I got in there, there's this big iguana-like creature, colorful, yellow and orange and red, maybe 15 feet long, huge. And it goes over, and there's another dinosaur there, and it eats it. And it, all in one bite, like a snake, unhitching its jaw, consumes it, and it becomes this kind of big, bloated, gelatinous-looking iguana thing. And I'm like, okay, is it going to explode or something? And it's like, nope. And it kind of continues on its way, goes into another room, like area where its babies are, and then barfs up parts of that dinosaur to feed its young. And I was like, this is the greatest game ever made. It looks so freaking good.
But just to harken back to the beginning of the podcast, this was a demo where they're like, this is crazy. No one can expect what's going on. It's going to change every time.
Yeah,
and
the
it's
same
like,
thing happened in our demo. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's the exact same thing again and again. And, you know, Capcom, they do what they can, but there's a lot of narration where it's like,
and-
oh, get a load of this, you guys.
I should say we're not saying that this is like pre-recorded. This was actually playable.
Oh, yeah, I
mean,
think so, yeah.
they were playing it live, but they were just doing it in the same way.
Right.
Yeah,
But no loads between zones.
Yeah.
I like that. You could still see them on the map, like how they're like different areas that you can kind of warp to and stuff like that. But seamless world, more environment interaction. You know, they showed a few where you get it tangled in like the T-Rex thing. I can't remember its name.
Anganath.
Angela,
recalled, yeah.
tethered into the vines, and then you drop like a big kind of bushy thing on its head.
Well, that was the coolest thing to me a couple things, but one is just how long the fight took, and it was a lot of running and trying to luring in different environments for traps, and then also something they emphasize as being new for this one is like a lot of monster on monster combat, where you lure the T-Rex looking thing into a pterodactyl looking nest, and then they take each other out, or at least damage each other.
Yeah,
the idea, because like in I played the Monster Hunter I played was the last one on 3DS.
Yeah,
put maybe like 10 or 15 hours into it.
Yeah.
And like that's one where it's like you go out, you take a mission, like one discrete mission, you go out to do it, and then like then the map just has that set up for that mission, so it has that one big monster in it. The idea in this one seems to be more that it's just like a persistent ecosystem, that monsters, even if you're not on a specific hunt for them, would still exist.
and then they're like they'd pop up in the UI like with the health bars and everything. It has a real what got me going, it got my juices flowing. It has a real King Kong vibe. Whereas a Skull Island, man, everything's possible. There's crazy giant things all over the place.
I didn't even think about that. I could totally see that. I did like that actually when they were up on the nest and you're like, oh, and just let him up here, and he placed a piece of meat down and then he walked away, and then like 2 minutes later it's like this guy, I don't know what it was, like some like saber-toothed tiger like monster kind of jumped up and like he was like, oh, I'm here. Oh, there's another monster. I'll attack him too. Like that was kind of fun. Using other monsters to like attack him. I think I would have liked that more if like that was. It felt like the fight just kept going after that. I like didn't really get a sense of like how much damage did that monster really do. Like why is this fight still going on 10 minutes later? Like it would have been nice if it's like I'm gonna set up this thing. I'm gonna lay my traps. All right, my traps went off. I got him. Like a little more definitive sense of like all right, my tricks worked and killed him.
That kind of thing is what drove me to stop playing the last Monster Hunter that I did. Is like like there are any number of things in that game that look interesting, and to me, like I'm excited to play the PS4 version of it. It has, I mean, like Reiner said, no loading times, which was a problem for me. Has actual like a real controller rather than the 3DS, which was a problem for me.
The Wii U one was awesome. Yeah.
But then there are just some things that are just so definitively Monster Hunter that they're not going to change, that I'm still not sure if I'm going to totally love. Like just these like fights that go. I mean, that fight was like a 20-minute.
It was a long time.
It was really long,
but not in a way that is like that to me felt maybe super compelling, because it's not like that monster's abilities or approach or tactics really changed that much during the course of the fight.
It's not like taking down like a Thunderjaw in Horizon Zero Dawn or something like that.
Well, now throw 3 friends in there with you.
Yeah, I mean that could be fun.
Yeah,
I mean it is fun.
Yeah, I mean like I can see it being fun. I guess all I mean is that like I don't see this as some sort, and I'm sure this is a positive for many people. This isn't a reinvention of like the Monster Hunter formula. It's still
it's very much still Monster Hunter, and it's still got some of the janky stuff around the corners that the series has had since PS2, right?
Yeah.
But it feels to me that it fixes enough of those things for me to feel like, you know what, I should give this another shot, because there's so much in there that seems interesting, but just enough stuff that drove me away from the last one.
I think, I'm kind of with you, Joe. Like, I might give it a try. I think Monster Hunter fans specifically should be really stoked for this, because it totally looks like everything they love,
awesome.
but way better.
Imagine being liberated from the 3DS.
Oh my
or
gosh.
Even Wii U, as lovable as that system is, just going to a PS4. Oh, great voice chat right there, ready to go.
No, it'd be super great. But yeah, I don't know if it doesn't. To me, it feels like I'm not on board, but it's like when I like Destiny enough to keep playing it, and so trying to like talk to somebody who doesn't like Destiny and be like, no, it's good. And they're like, yeah, but it's so repetitive. All you're doing is the same thing. You go out, play a bunch of strikes, come back and upgrade your gear, and like that's all you do over and over again. I'm like, yeah, I mean that's how Destiny or Monster Hunter looks to me from the outside. It's like I'm not part of that.
Yeah,
indoctrinated
it's not a strike.
cult.
It's taking out a great Jagraz.
I'll take you on a hunt, Ben Reeves.
I mean, maybe that's all it takes. Is like, if I had a bunch of friends with me, I could totally see me getting into it.
There's a lot of tracking down mucus-like substances, which was a big key point.
Yeah,
for this
in my demo, the lady giving it, she's like, "Oh, it looks beautiful," and I was like, "That's spit, lady." Spitting on a tree, and you're complimenting it.
Yeah. The monsters do look really. I mean, they do look really cool.
Oh yeah, the new tech is very cool looking, and they've always had big, gorgeous Jurassic Park looking creatures, right? The way they'd move and stuff like that. But now it's just like the one when it ate that other one, And just the way its belly was moving, I was
Yeah.
like,
Right.
that's sweet
Reiner's
belly
a vor
physics.
fetishist.
There was
But,
a part I didn't understand. So he's using his sword for like 15 minutes, and then near the end, he goes back to his base and loads up a Gatling gun and comes back and shoots the guy, and it's doing way more damage with that thing. I'm like, why wouldn't you just use that all the time?
well,
Like,
they have to show off the different stuff.
Yeah,
you know, different
you
equipment.
might do that, but the odds of you maybe having both of those, I mean, that's high level stuff. It's a demo, right? Like,
yeah, maybe it's just I didn't understand Monster
and
Hunter
she
enough
said,
to
but
know. But
they said all the weapons were all leveled up for us in this demo, and they were going to switch between a bunch of the 14 different types or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if you had that gun at that point, you might just rock that out there as is.
I think there's also something to be said about, like, for a game that's built with something like 4-player co-op in mind, that a gun might be a very situational sort of like ranged weapon, and if you're dealing with a very like fast-moving melee monster, that would probably be a garbage weapon.
yeah, you need like somebody to draw the heat. Which I could totally get that. I didn't get a sense for that in the demo I watched. Is the only
Yeah,
thing.
me neither.
Yeah, I want to know how they're going to do like the hub where you get your missions and stuff like that. They haven't gone into that. They showed the village a little bit of equipping your stuff and then your little cute
Little
companion
tent with Palico and stuff.
Yeah,
It was very adorable.
But it was cool that they both wore different armor, and it looks
Yeah.
like that's going to be a pretty deep well again.
But even though we talked about Sony and third parties for the C3 was kind of a disappointment. I mean, this is not a PlayStation exclusive. This is still third parties coming to Xbox One. And it said-
Later on PC.
they did say later on PC. I'm curious what that means exactly.
It means not at the same time. It's like
Oh,
after
that
the
makes
Yeah,
more
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I'll be damned. Other thoughts? E3 2017 before we roll over to our guests here?
I'd love to talk about Minute if we got a minute.
We have 1 minute.
We
for
got
minute.
1 minute.
Yeah.
It's like the coolest game I saw today. It was
What?
over at the Devolver booth. It's a game. I don't know if you remember like Half Minute Hero. It reminded me a little bit of that.
Okay.
Because
But
of the name?
yeah, exactly. You play the
Damn it,
game.
Ben.
You find this like cursed sword on the beach, and as soon as you pick it up, it kills you every 60 seconds. So you spend the whole game like exploring this map, this kind of like Zelda style top-down map, trying to find new items and stuff. But every 60 seconds you die.
Yeah.
So it's not like a super huge world, but you're trying to like explore the level. Like I found a key and it led me into this lighthouse, and then I found stuff up there that led me.
Can you explore
a
without the sword?
cave? You could, but you wouldn't get very far because you need the sword to like. You would never beat the game.
I'm
Like,
just
you
saying,
need
if
the
it's like
sword
pick
to
up the
start.
sword and die, I'll be like, no, I'm good.
I'm good. Well, that's how you start the game.
Seems fun.
But when you pick up an item, another item, like you get to keep those items each time.
Okay.
So there is that sense of progression you're making. So I'll find
Interesting.
an item and I keep that for my second playthrough. And it's like quick starts.
And it's
So
like
every time you die,
retro
you're
aesthetic for the
immediately
whole
back.
thing as
Yeah,
well.
it's like black and white.
Yeah.
Reminded me of Game Boy, but it's not that like color palette.
Yeah,
but,
we're going for Link's Awakening. Getting a sword on a beach is very Link's Awakening.
Yeah, it's cute. It's playful. I met a man at the beach on further down. It was very funny. He was like trying to tell me where this treasure was buried, but he's talking very slow. So I'm looking at my counter. I'm like, I got 30 seconds left, and he's like, yeah, I kind of like to watch the boats go by and the waves wash on shore. I'm like, dude, 10 seconds, I'm dying.
You don't know how much this sword sucks.
Oh, the treasure. I buried a treasure down by, and then I died. And I was like, I had to run back. I'm like, I need to make sure I have all the time. But yeah, so I don't know. It looked really good.
Sounds
good
clever.
premise.
Sounds clever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they said it was coming out later this year. So
And Devolver, they were in the Hooters
right.
lobby. What? Where were they set up?
they were just buried out back across the street.
Oh, by Outback.
Yeah, that's right. By Outback Steakhouse. Tim was running the joint. I don't know. They were, yeah. I know there's that controversy between them and the ESA about how
Outback and
they were gonna set up somewhere. No, they were
Yeah,
gonna
the Outback
Yeah, the
Hooters
Outback.
rivalry.
I know Devolver was gonna set up somewhere else, but then the ESA had. I don't know the whole legal situation, but it sounds like ESA created some problems for them, and they're out $100,000.
And this
So
is
they
the
had to go
premise for
back
Minute?
to their. Yeah, that's right. Oh, in Minute there was like the little like booth we were at was like put into the game. I'm like, is this gonna be in the final thing? Like,
It's gonna confuse so
it's
many
gonna be so
people.
confusing, but yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't work as well. God, which Call of Duty was it where the convention center was in it, and then when they demoed it, you were inside the space? Was that Modern Warfare 2? 3?
yeah, I think it was
3?
3.
God, that was.
3, yeah.
I could be way
weird.
off. I think it was a
Yeah.
Call of Duty.
I think so too.
Well,
All
I'd
right,
know where
maybe
to
not.
find all the least crowded bathrooms there. That's for sure.
Oh God, there's some real hot secret bathrooms. If anybody needs any advice, send me a DM. I'll let you know about the LA Convention Center. Or we're just a huge fan of Face Off, and you want cool deets on where that film was, one sequence was filmed. I'll really let you know. Also, turns out Westworld. Apparently, like the office space in Westworld was filmed in the convention center as well. I
Wait,
saw
this
people
one?
tweeting the comparison shots.
No kidding.
Really?
Yeah, I'll show it to you in a little bit.
Holy
crazy.
crap.
Anyways,
Cool.
but that's it for our Westworld podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in for the first half, at least. If you're watching the video version, there's going to be a separate YouTube version somewhere in your feed. Definitely look for it. It'll be posted near this one with developers for the second half. And if you're listening to the audio version, stay tuned because we have great developers coming up. And we're not out on video yet, so everyone wave goodbye.